Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's February 6th. Today we celebrate the Italian botanist who introduced coffee and bananas to Europe, and the botanist who described new varieties of mums from China on this day in 1822. We'll learn about the man who could see the capabilities of a landscape and the botanist who wrote encouraging letters to one of his students. Today's Unearthed Words feature sayings and poems about the winter mindset. And we grow that garden library with a book that helps you encourage different types of wildlife into your garden. I'll talk about a garden item that you'll use every spring if you like to grow plants from seed. And then we'll wrap things up with a cute little story that involves Loganberries. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. Here's today's curated articles. First up is a post that talked about the Aphid alarm pheromone. This post was featured in the blog Simon Leather, and it starts out this way. We're all familiar with the effects of epinephrine and norepinephrine on us when placed in a position of stress, like public speaking or even worse, danger. In the case of aphids, the response is quite fascinating. Aphids, when perceiving a threat to their neighbors by a predator or a parasite, flee the scene rapidly, by flight if winged, and on foot if need be. They'll even leap from their host plant to the ground below. The hope here is for researchers to be able to identify that alarm pheromone and use it as an alternative to chemical control of insect pests. If you'd like to read this post in detail for yourself, you can find it in the Facebook group for the show. Just search for Aphid, and this post will pop up. And then next up was a post that was shared in the middle of January on The Guardian, and it asked this question: is it ever okay to steal plant cuttings? When I shared this in the Facebook group for the show, it triggered a lot of conversation. The majority of listeners are not okay with stealing plant cuttings. This article actually started out by sharing the story of Corey Jarrell of Portland, Oregon. He had posted a picture on his Instagram showing limp cuttings of plants. They'd all been pinched off without permission off of many of Jarrell's rare plants. Jarrell has a specialty plant shop called the Potted Elephant. Jarrell was giving a group of people a tour, and when he was in his greenhouse, he happened to notice that a cutting was missing from a plant. When he confronted the person that he suspected, she opened up her handbag and there were just a pile of cuttings inside her purse. Needless to say, Jarrell was in shock, and police ended up charging the perpetrator with theft and vandalism. Jarrell estimated the damage to be about $2,000 in total, including plants that were damaged, especially some of his rare, valuable specimens. Some of them were damaged in the process of taking the cuttings. Such a shame. In any case, this is a great article that was written by Gray Chapman. If you want to read more on your own, you can hear about all the different places that have to deal with this. It's not just plant shops. It can be conservatories and museums even. Who knew? You can check it out in the Facebook group for the show just by searching for the word cutting, and this post will pop up. Now, if you'd like to check out these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of them in the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show. It's called the Daily Gardener Community. If you'd like to join the group, all you have to do, the next time you're in Facebook, just head on up to the search bar, type in the Daily Gardener Community and request to join. And then I'll admit you into the group. And then voila, you'll have all of the articles showing up in your Facebook feed. And if you miss any, you just have to head into the group and they'll all be there for you. You don't have to track anything down. It's very, very easy and no spam. Everything that I curate is put in there personally by me. So it's all good stuff. It's articles that I find interesting that I hope you'll benefit from as well. And I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the anniversary of the death of the 17th century Italian botanist Prospero Alpini, who died on this day in 1617. Alpini introduced coffee and bananas to Europe. He was also the first person to make observations about the sexual differences in plants. The male and female flowers of the date palm, for instance, are born on separate plants. This knowledge allowed Alpini to become the first person to fertilize the female flowers of date palms artificially. Date palms were popular garden plants in Roman gardens. The fruit is very useful and is the basis for syrup, alcohol, vinegar, and liquor. The genus Alpinia, belonging to the ginger family, is named for Alpini. Alpinia is also known as the ginger lily. Ginger lilies are perennials, and the blooms have a gardenia fragrance. That's nice. Ginger lilies are also a wonderful cut flower. And it was on this day in 1822 that Joseph Sabine gave a presentation to the London Horticultural Society. He was describing some new varieties of Chinese chrysanthemums. 11 different kinds of mums had been imported 2 years earlier in 1820, and they had been thriving in the Society's garden at Chiswick. In 1753, Carl Linnaeus combined the two Greek words chrysos, meaning gold, with anthemum, meaning flower. Chrysanthemum is the birth flower for November. In Japan, the highest order of chivalry is the Imperial Order of the Chrysanthemum. And National Chrysanthemum Day, or the Festival of Happiness, has been celebrated in Japan since 910. Chrysanthemum Day is always celebrated September 9th, the 9th day of the 9th month, because in terms of numerology, that day, September 9th, is regarded as an auspicious day. Now, when Joseph Sabine described the quilled pink chrysanthemum in detail for the London Horticultural Society, members had only heard about the quilled flamed yellow variety. The quilled pink version was exciting. Sabine wouldn't even recognize modern mums, although some mums still look like their sister flowers, daisies. Mums are bred to be showier. Regardless of their appearance, mums belong to the Compositae family or daisy family. And there's another highlight for Joseph Sabine. He was serving as the secretary for the Horticultural Society, and he's remembered for sending David Douglas on his 6-month expedition to North America. Douglas named the digger pine Pinus sabiniana in honor of Joseph Sabine. And today is the anniversary of the death of the renowned landscape gardener, Lancelot Capability Brown, who died on this day in 1783. In the 1730s, Lancelot ended up at Stowe, working for the great William Kent, the eminent painter and landscape architect. The garden at Stowe was a landscape garden with lots of straight lines and formality. The end result was a garden that looked like a painting with an 11-acre lake. The main area of the garden was the Elysian Fields, 40 acres featuring buildings and monuments that flank two narrow lakes called the River Styx. The monuments in the garden honor virtuous men of Britain. The time Lancelot spent with Kent at Stowe transformed not only the land, but also Lancelot from a gardener to a landscape architect. It was his big break, and it gave him the confidence to set out on his own. After Stowe, Lancelot traveled all over England. When working for clients, he would stare out at the blank canvas of a new project and seek to find the capabilities of the landscape, removing workers' cottages or older gardens when he felt the need to do so. And he would ask people, what are the capabilities? And it earned him the unshakable nickname of Capability. Capability Brown's skill of seeing landscapes and then creating them made him very popular. Everyone with means wanted a Capability Brown landscape. They craved his signature look, his garden designs, and garden temples. What everyone essentially wanted was beauty, and Capability created beautiful gardens. For 19 years, Capability served as the King's Master Gardener. Today, at least 20 Capability gardens still exist and are under the care of England's National Trust. When Lancelot died, the English writer Horace Walpole sent word to the noblewoman Anne Fitzpatrick that, quote, Lady Nature's second husband was dead. He also sent a poem about Capability to the poet and gardener William Mason. Here's what it said. With one lost paradise, the name of our first ancestor is stained. Brown shall enjoy unsullied fame, for many a paradise he regained. And finally, it was on this day in 1946 that the botanist Edgar Anderson wrote to his student Charles B. Heiser Jr. He wrote, "Oh, stamp collecting, when will taxonomists ever take any interest in being biologists? Once when I traveled with E.J. Palmer, I went to a good deal of trouble to get a whole sheet of lily pods, and he threw it away because it made such a nasty-looking specimen, and he wasn't certain what species it belonged to anyway." It turns out this was just one of many letters that Edgar wrote to his student. In 1972, Charles wrote a lovely tribute about Edgar called Student Days with Edgar Anderson, or How I Came to Study Sunflowers. To prepare his tribute, Charles sifted through the many letters that he'd received from Edgar during his lifetime. They filled up a folder over 2 inches thick. Over the years, Edgar was an encouraging mentor to Charles, writing, "What an incredible gift good students are. And if you're tired of Helianthus and don't want to look at him anymore for a while, why, by all means, put them aside. Don't let anybody's advice, including mine, keep you from what you're happiest doing. Sunflowers, or Helianthus annuus, are native to North America. When the Russian Tsar Peter the Great saw a sunflower for the first time in Holland, he fell in love with them and he had them brought back to Russia. The Russian public loved sunflowers as well, but not just for their happy flowers. Unlike other cooking oils, the oil from sunflower seeds was approved by the Russian Orthodox Church for use during Lent. By the early 1800s, 2 million acres of sunflowers were planted in Russia every single year. Ironically, over the next century, immigrants from Russia would bring sunflower seeds with them when they immigrated to the United States. The Russian hybrids had bigger blooms than the original American varieties. Now, most gardeners attempt growing sunflowers at some point. So if you find yourself wanting to give them a try this year, here are some tips to consider. First, sunflowers really do need a ton of sun. Don't be stingy with the sunshine and put them in part shade. That's not going to make them happy. These are plants that really appreciate all the rays they can get. Second, sunflowers follow the sun. They exhibit a behavior known as heliotropism. In the morning, the heads will face east, and then the heads will move to track the sun throughout the day. As they mature, the tracking movement will become less pronounced. The stem will lose its flexibility in order to support the large, mature bloom. Third, don't be surprised if you find a few sunflowers reseeding themselves in your garden after your initial planting. It's a lovely surprise in the years to come and a little memento from that first batch of sunflowers. And finally, once the seeds ripen, the birds will begin to visit, and you'll notice more activity from species like goldfinches. They love sunflower seeds. If you feel inclined, you can dry some of the seed heads to share with them later during the cold months of winter. In Unearthed Words, here are some words about the winter mindset. These first two are from the French poet and writer Victor Hugo. Laughter is the sun that drives winter from the human face. And winter is on my head, but eternal spring is in my heart. This one's from John Burroughs, the American naturalist and writer, from his 1866 work, The Snow Walkers. The tendinous part of the mind, so to speak, is more developed in winter, the fleshy in summer. I should say, winter had given the bone and sinew to literature, summer the tissues and blood. Here's one from Alexandra Gorna Shelley, the American chef. Winter blues are cured every time with a potato gratin paired with a roast chicken. And here's a little poem from the poet, critic, and Reverend Roy R. Gibson. Keep your faith in beautiful things, in the sun when it is hidden, in the spring when it is gone. And then you will find that duty and service and sacrifice, all the old ogres and bugbears of, have joy imprisoned in their deepest dungeons. And it is for you to set them free, the immortal joys that no one, no living soul or fate or circumstance can rob you of once you have released them. And here's an excerpt from Watership Down by the English novelist Richard Adams. Many human beings say that they enjoy the winter, but what they really enjoy is feeling proof against it. And finally, here's a thought from the American naturalist and writer John Burroughs. To many forms of life of our northern lands, winter means a long sleep. To others, it means what it means to many fortunate human beings, travels in warm climes. To still others, who again have their human prototypes, it means a struggle, more or less fierce, to keep soul and body together. While to many insect forms, it means death. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Wildlife Gardening by Kate Bradbury. The subtitle to this book is For Everyone and Everything, the Wildlife Trusts. This book is an easy-to-follow gardening guide that's endorsed by the Wildlife Trusts and the Royal Horticultural Society to help you encourage different types of wildlife into your garden. Kate is an award-winning writer who specializes in wildlife gardening. She's the author of The Bumblebee Flies Away. She works on BBC Gardener's World magazine, and she regularly writes for the Daily Telegraph, The Guardian, and so on. What I love about Kate's book is that she breaks it down by accessible groups of species, and each chapter explains what they require to thrive, what their role is in the garden, and how they contribute to the garden ecosystem. Chapters cover birds and pollinators, amphibians, wasps, flies, etc. Some will be your favorites. Others are more likely to be overlooked. But each chapter gives a wide range of suggestions of useful plants and projects, and then suggestions for how you can relax and observe the habitats that you've created in your garden. Don't forget, you want your garden to be a space for you as well, in addition to the other species you welcome to your garden. You can get a used copy of Wildlife Gardening by Kate Bradbury and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for under $13. And here's today's great gift for a gardener. It's one you'll use every spring if you're starting seeds at home. It's the Ladbrokes Mini 4 handheld soil blocker. The Mini 4 is the most popular size worldwide. Once you use a soil blocker, you won't go back. This size makes 4 2-inch soil blocks. Ladbrokes are makers of high-quality products. This soil blocker is made of zinc-coated steel, and it will last for years. And I love what they write in the disclaimer for most of their products. They say, these are utilitarian gardening tools. Cosmetic blemishes and water bathing marks made during manufacturing are natural and in no way alter the functionality of the tool. To me, that's what makes them so great. And I love their emphasis on utilitarian gardening tools. These are tools that are meant to be used. And I should also add, loved. You can get the Ladbrokes Mini 4 handheld soil blocker and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for $33.99. great garden tool. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. When I was researching Edgar Anderson for today's show and reading Charles Heisler's tribute to him, I ran across a little story that involved Loganberries. Loganberries, or Rubus loganabacus, are grown on vines known as brambles. They smell like raspberries, but they're tart and they have a slightly sweet taste. Loganberries are named for their California creator, James Harvey Logan, who came up with the idea to cross a blackberry with a raspberry. Sadly, Loganberries don't have a very long shelf life, which is why you don't see them in stores. If you decide to grow them, most people keep the berries on the vine as long as possible, which makes them more flavorful. Anyway, this talk on Loganberries brings me back to Charles Heisler's tribute to Edgar, which was titled Student Days with Edgar Anderson, or How I Came to Study Sunflowers. Charles ended his tribute to Edgar with this adorable little story that included Loganberries, among other things. And it reminds us that botanists are people too. Charles wrote, "I haven't told you anything about Edgar's music sessions. He played the recorder, nor about the square dances at the barn, nor about his cooking. I think one of the worst dishes I have ever eaten was his Spam, covered with breadcrumbs soaked in Loganberry juice, perhaps because he raved about it so. I hope to have given you some insight into the character of Edgar Anderson, teacher and botanist. The latter is the title he chose for himself and his later years at the Missouri Botanical Garden." Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org. And be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.